In 2019, Airbus killed it after 14 years, after $25 billion. After building the largest passenger aircraft in history, they pulled the plug, stopped production, wrote off the losses, and walked away. The A380 was supposed to be the future of aviation, the plane that would define the next 50 years of air travel, the double-decker super jumbo that would make the Boeing 747 look small. It lasted less than 2 decades. But here's what nobody talks about. The A380 didn't fail because it was a bad plane. It failed because one man made a $25 billion bet, and the entire global aviation industry moved in the opposite direction. This is the story of that bet, who made it, why they made it, and the decision that turned the most ambitious aircraft program in history into the most expensive mistake aviation has ever seen. To understand what went wrong, you have to go back to the year 2000. The logic seemed bulletproof. Air travel was growing. Airports were congested. The world's busiest routes were running out of slots. You couldn't add more flights. The runways were full. So the solution was obvious. If you can't add more flights, make the flights bigger. Airbus looked at the data and saw one future: mega hubs, a world where passengers would funnel into massive connecting airports. Dubai, Frankfurt, Singapore, Hong Kong. The A380 was built for that world. 555 seats in standard configuration. Over 800 if you stripped out the premium cabins. The largest commercial aircraft ever built. A flying city. Airbus projected they would sell 200 of them over 20 years. They needed 420 just to break even. They ended up selling 251. Here is where the bet gets interesting. Airbus wasn't wrong about congestion. They weren't wrong about growth. They were wrong about where the growth was going. Because while Airbus was designing a plane for the mega hub world, Boeing was betting on something completely different. Not bigger, smaller, more efficient, more direct. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner. Twin engines, 250 seats, designed specifically to fly routes that had never existed before, not hub to hub, city to city, direct, Portland to Tokyo, Austin to Amsterdam, Nashville to London. Boeing's argument was simple. Passengers don't want to connect, they want to go directly from where they are to where they want to be, and new engine technology meant a twin-engine plane could now cross oceans efficiently enough to make those routes profitable. 2 aircraft, 2 visions of aviation's future. One was right. The 787 has sold over 500 units. The A380 sold 251. The gap tells you everything. But this still doesn't explain the $25 billion, because Airbus knew the risk. They knew American airlines weren't interested. United passed, Delta passed, American passed. Not a single major US carrier ordered a single A380. Airbus went ahead anyway. Why? One airline, one order, one man who saw the world differently from everyone else. In 2001, Emirates placed an order for 58 A380s, before the plane had flown, before a single test flight, the largest aircraft order in history at the time, for a plane that existed only on paper. The man behind that order was Tim Clark, president of Emirates, and his logic was the mirror image of Boeing's. Clark looked at Dubai, a city with no domestic market, no hub-and-spoke network, just one airport, at the center of the world. Dubai sits within 8 hours of 2/3 of the global population. You can reach Europe, Asia, Africa, and Australia, all within a single long-haul flight. Clark saw this and built an entire airline around one idea: bring everyone to Dubai, then send them everywhere else. For that model, the A380 was perfect: massive capacity, long range, premium cabins that justified premium prices, the ability to move enormous numbers of passengers through a single hub with maximum efficiency. Emirates ended up buying 123 A380s, nearly half of every A380 ever built. One airline, half the entire production run. And here's where the bet starts to break down. Because Clark was right. For Dubai, the A380 worked perfectly for the Emirates model, but Airbus had designed a plane for one airline's geography and tried to sell it to the entire world. To fill 555 seats on a route, you need 555 people all going to the same place at the same time. In Dubai, with passengers connecting from dozens of countries, that's achievable. In Frankfurt or Paris or London, it becomes nearly impossible. And then ETOPS happened. In 2007, regulators approved twin-engine aircraft to fly up to 330 minutes from the nearest airport. That's every ocean route in the world. The regulatory advantage 4-engine aircraft had owned for decades was gone overnight. Suddenly, a 787 or an A350 could fly every route an A380 could fly, with half the engines, burning significantly less fuel, carrying fewer passengers, but only needing to fill 250 seats instead of 555. The A380's business case collapsed in the space of a single regulatory decision. Airbus kept building, kept hoping, kept offering discounts to airlines that kept not ordering. By 2018, production had fallen to 8 aircraft per year. They needed 30 just to break even. The math had become impossible. In February 2019, Emirates, the airline that had kept the entire program alive, reduced its final order. Not cancelled entirely, reduced, by enough to make the numbers unworkable. Airbus announced the end of production 6 days later. $25 billion spent, 14 years of development, production, and delivery, 251 aircraft built and flying, and a program that needed diff 120 sales to break even, finishing at 251, the single largest financial loss in commercial aviation history. But here's the part that gets overlooked in every obituary written about the A380. The plane wasn't the mistake, the bet was. The A380 is, by almost every engineering measure, an extraordinary aircraft. Passengers love it. Airports that handle it regularly call it one of the smoothest operations they run. Emirates still flies 123 of them and has no plans to retire them early. The mistake was betting $25 billion on one vision of aviation's future: mega hubs, mass transit, scale over flexibility, in a world that was moving toward the opposite. Boeing bet on point-to-point, on passenger preference for direct flights, on engine technology making small more efficient than large. They were right. Airbus bet on scale, on hub dominance, on the idea that bigger would always beat more direct. They were wrong. And the difference between those two bets, made in boardrooms in the late 1990s, is why one program sold 500 aircraft and the other sold 251. The last A380 rolled out of the Toulouse factory in March 2021, delivered to Emirates, the same airline that started it all. $25 billion. One man's vision, one airline's geography, and a bet on the future of aviation that the future refused to confirm. The plane still flies. Emirates will keep flying it for decades. It will carry hundreds of millions of passengers before the last one is retired. But as a program, as a commercial proposition, the A380 is the story of what happens when you build the right plane for the wrong world. And if you think $25 billion is the most anyone has ever lost betting on aviation's future, the story of what happened to Boeing in the decade that followed makes this look like a minor miscalculation.